Multiple carjackings lead Sherlock and Joan to follow two different cases on this week's Elementary Season 3, Episode 21. Elementary typically strikes a 70-30th balance between cases and development of the main characters. That division is about on par for a procedural show that chooses to focus on the profession more so than the partnership. But Holmes and Watson is a partnership that not only deserves the spotlight every now and again, it is given it. It is important, however, to also expand that scope to include key components of the detectives' lives that never quite take center stage. For Joan, that is her relationship with her pre-investigator friends, and for Sherlock, that is his sponsor Alfredo. In contrast to one Watson, one Holmes, this week's episode switches Sherlock and Joan's role between the A story and the B story. Joan steps up to hold her own as lead investigator on the case. In a nice change of pace, Sherlock is not working the case in the background waiting for his moment to provide his findings in exposition, while Joan runs around chasing dead-end leads. The case is presented with one man stopping an ambulance transporting a woman who fainted in front of a drugstore. Wallace Turk hijacks the ambulance in the medical bay, pulling a gun on the two paramedics, firing, collecting his shell casings, and driving off with the woman as his hostage. Besides doing a poor job of hiding his face from the cameras, Turk missed a shell casing that linked him to other cases, due to the DIY nature of the bullets. Turk refuses to give up the location of the missing woman, choosing to protect his co-conspirators since he is already booked for 2 murders. Marshy sand deposits found in his shoes take Detective Bell to the abandoned ambulance. Gregson, back in the picture for more than a few quick asides, examines the body of the kidnapped victim, Maggie Halburn. A hasty slice to the throat is what killed her, but the murderer went further to carefully gut her body, presumably taking a few organs with him as he fled. The wounds from the organs that were presumed stolen, a gallbladder, a bit of intestine, and a kidney were in the process of healing from a surgery a few days prior. They were not removed to prevent an illness, but rather to make room for smuggling drugs back into the country. Joan and Belle learn from Halburn's roommate that she recently returned from a trip to São Paulo, Brazil, where she went under the knife for discounted gastric bypass surgery. Skeptical at first, her story checks out when her fridge is filled with the necessary provisions for a patient expecting to adjust their eating habits following the procedure. The surgeon performing the procedures turns out to be a ghost in the wind, disappearing from the city shortly after the procedures. His only connection thus far proves to be his marriage to Wallace Turk's sister, Connie. With a BO out on the doctor, Joan and Belle turn their attention to tracking the 40 ulbs of heroin circulating the city. Sherlock chimes in that it would take time for that amount of medical-grade narcotic to be converted to street-grade. Time to knock on the doors of a few drug lords. Sherlock takes a rain check on the drugs and decides to pay his sponsor, Alfredo, a visit. Earlier in the week, he took notice of someone is a bit out of place in a meeting for recovering addicts. Confronting the man outside of a church basement, he discovers that Lloyd was tailing Alfredo for hijacking cars with his former employer's security system and moving them. Days after receiving his 5-year chip, Alfredo's battle of his dismissal from Castle turns personal when they start badmouthing his addiction around to his other clients. A sponsor's primary concern is the sobriety of their sponsee. This role is one that Alfredo takes very seriously and personally, but it prohibits them from being friends. Sherlock attempts to cross that line by showing his concern for Alfredo, but Alfredo reminds him that the concern only goes one way. The DEA's list of narcotics dealers lead Joan and Belle to the dental office of Dr. Ward, a perfect cover for drug running, since medical offices cannot be bugged due to doctor-patient confidentiality. Ward offers up Lenko, the lead trafficker, whose business was dwindling in the face of a bad crop from his supplier. Joan places a bit of pressure on Lenko, and is paid off with a lead that takes them to an exchange. Lenko may not get the supply, but his competitors will not have the chance to do so either. Sherlock finds himself locked in a battle of mind versus heart. Joan finds him poring over the Voynich manuscript, language believed to be the greatest mystery in terms of language origin. This temporarily provides his mind with another stimulus to distract from the concerns he feels for a man he is reminded is not his friend. The definition of the relationship is there in front of him. It makes